Bill me for the repairs later.
Let's get this out of the way. I love this game. I firmly believe it's a 10. And if I could give it 11, I would, and I should. But this video is going to show you 5 things I loved about the Resident Evil 4 Remake with one thing I thought was weird. And let's start with the thing that I thought was weird. There are certain sections of the game in which enemies do not stop respawning. And it's weird because you don't know unless Leon provides an auditory clue. He'll say something along the lines of there's no end to them or they won't stop coming. And that can be kind of confusing to you because you're like, all right, man, it's just a smart ass quip. That's who Leon is. But in chapter 2, when you're trying to grab a certain item so that you can progress through the next area, you are tasked with going through this kind of vertical area. And OG fans of Resident Evil 4 know, okay, we'll just go in and then go out. It's pretty quick. But once you start to clear out enemies, that's it, right? They're all dead. We're good to go. However, in the RE4 Remake, they don't stop respawning. And this can be really surprising, especially if you're a new player to the game. You're going to be really flustered because of how intense some of the fights are. If you're an OG player, you're probably sitting there wondering, what am I doing wrong? Is the game glitching? Is the game bugging out? Am I supposed to be wasting this much ammo? The answer is no. You are just supposed to complete your objective as quickly as possible and get the hell out of the area. Because if you don't, you're going to be wasting so much time and resource. I wasn't too frustrated with this design choice. However, I wish they made it more evident. And if you're a veteran of Resident Evil 4, you know that with most of these areas, it's just progress through to get the objective and then leave. But here, it becomes a battle arena, and I thought that was just weird. It might just be me. Now let's jump into the 5 things that I love about the RE4 Remake. The first thing is parrying. This is a godsend, especially for those of us who like to get into the thick of it. We don't want to cheese or anything. We like to see what the combat's all about. I think parrying is massive in this game, especially because of how forgiving the windows are. If you happen to land a perfect parry, it'll stagger the enemy, leaving them open to a massive physical attack. Super cool. I love the fact that you can parry projectiles. I think that's very fun. That means arrows, knives, axes, Molotov cocktails, and dynamite. It's really fun knocking back that stuff and just watching them explode. I love parrying. Next up, let's talk about the boss fights. So, there are some that have been completely unchanged, for better or for worse, and I think that's fine. I don't think some of those fights have really held up well, but I'm not going to complain. It was just cool seeing them reskinned. There are also some fights in which the bosses have been completely retooled. One fight in particular has just completely changed the way they played. And in Resident Evil 4, there was an area where you could cheese if you just kind of hid to the left or to the right. And in this fight, there's really no place for you to go. It is a really fun, really intense fight. And I appreciate the fact that the developers did their best in retooling some of those fights, because honestly, I don't think certain strats should continue to work. I think you have to probably dig deeper to be more imaginative. And they do that here, and it works really well. If you've played the Resident Evil 4 Remake for a short time, let's say about an hour, and you're a returning fan, you've probably said to yourself, this game feels a tad bit more challenging than the original. And you're right. And the reason for that is that there were certain spots and areas that you could cheese, that you can no longer cheese because the developers want you to be in the action. And the Resident Evil 4 Remake just wants you to make new friends constantly. And the best example of this is Luis's cabin. It takes no time for enemies to start breaking down windows, destroying the bookshelves, and just pouring in and making you feel as uncomfortable as possible. It's the perfect experience. You have enemies with axes, pitchforks, Molotovs, whatever, and they are looking to put you on your back foot the entire time. One of the things that I love about this game is that if you happen to knock down an enemy, let's say you melee them, and they start to have that seizure, Now, usually their head pops off and Captain Tentacle pops out. However, if they don't do that and it make it looks like their neck is broken in a certain way, that means they're going to get up like the Crimson Heads from Resident Evil 1 and they will chase you to the ends of this earth. And it is one of the scariest things I have ever experienced in a video game. Watching these dudes tank shots is absolutely terrifying, and it's a thrilling experience. I love the fact that the developers were so adamant about making the RE4 remake as intense as possible. Moving on. So the good news is, if you did not like the AI in the OG Resident Evil 4 because you thought Ashley was a pain in the ass in regard to going from point A to point B, it's not as bad in this game. It really isn't. I think that one of the things you have to be cognizant of is switching from the tight formation to the loose formation. You really want to be tight when you're running through enemies. Like, you want to just kind of sprint through a place because you know that you're going to get overwhelmed. If, however, you are going to get into a fight and you are fighting enemies who are mutated, you need to put her in the loose formation, because if you do not, she will more than likely get down by the tentacle enemies, and they do so much damage to Leon. It is insane. So you have to be smart with the way you use Ashley. Now, you still have to be really cognizant of where she is, because if you're running from enemies and she's not directly behind you when you turn, she'll be in front of you. She's going to drop down like she usually does. And if your aim isn't good or you're panicking, you're more than likely going to hit her, and you'll either down her, especially if you hit her body with the pistol, or you're going to kill her. If you use a shotgun, rifle, I think there's probably another gun, like the Magnum if you're some type of psychopath, you are going to kill her. So just be cognizant of that. Here's a little tip. Before you start rolling into an area, if you begin to notice that there's ammo and craftable items everywhere, but there's no enemies in sight, you're more than likely going to run into a combat section. I would recommend looking around first and see if there's a locker or someplace you can stash Ashley, so therefore you can one-on-one all these enemies. Just saying, it's very rare that it happens in this game, but it's important to look around, because if you have her roaming with you, I promise you, she will get in the way, especially when things start to ratchet up and get more intense and they start throwing sub-bosses and stuff like that. Stash Ashley as quickly as possible, because certain enemies will not just knock her down, and you will not have enough time to get her back up. Now, the other thing is, the AI with Luis is fantastic. He does a really good job of drawing enemy aggro. He will kill enemies. He will knock some of them down for you. He will throw you ammo. It is a great step up from the original game, and I'm really appreciative of the fact that the devs took the time out to improve the AI of both of your partners. Love that. Really big improvement. At any point in time, if you were disappointed about the lack of horror elements in the original Resident Evil 4, don't you fret, because the RE4 Remake has your back. Once you start getting into the nighttime sections of this game, it is absolutely terrifying. The developers do an excellent job of giving you just enough light to see what's ahead of you, but you're also really tensed up because you don't know where an enemy is going to come from. Because the villagers are one thing, but some enemies will come out of vents. Some enemies will jump from the fucking ceiling. It is an absolute horror experience, and I'm very happy to report that the RE4 Remake does embrace the horror side of the game. Now, it is still a straight action horror game, don't get that wrong, but there are a number of segments in which it is pitch black, and it is you running around in the dark, hoping that you can find your way to the light, because if you don't, you're more than likely going to die a very grisly death. And like, if you've played this game just a little bit, some of these deaths are really brutal and also incredibly entertaining. But I love the fact that the horror element is back and is emphasized. And it's not just the Ashley sections. It is everything Leon does in the dark. There are certain areas where you see an enemy coming out of the side. You're like, okay, well, I know what's coming next. And then they immediately appear somewhere else. And you're just like, all right, fuck. And if you get to a certain part, and you know what I'm talking about, we're talking about the regenerators. You get to that section of the game, it is a whole different ballgame. It is absolutely terrifying because they did not fuck around with those in the remake. It's really funny. They range from like kind of goofy looking until they start to lunge at you with incredible speed in the pitch black darkness. That shit will always be scary. And that is going to do it for this video. So please leave a comment below and tell us how you're feeling about the Resident 4 Remake. Do you like the game? Do you hate the game? Do you like the changes, hate the changes? Do you hate Leon's hair? I love his hair. Do you hate the new Ashley? I love the new Ashley. Do you love Luis? Do you love Luis? Seriously. Why would you hate on that man? He's fantastic. But like, share, and subscribe. I'm Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I will talk to you next time.